The NHS estimates that their cervical screening programme saves around 5,000 lives every year. But even screening provokes debate. I'm in Glasgow to meet Dr. Margaret McCartney. She's a GP and an honorary fellow at the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine. She wants to tell me about some research that turns the tables on what we think we know about cancer.
So when I was at medical school, very much you were taught that cancer is a bad thing, and certainly very often it is a bad thing. It's something you would want to know about and treat. But it's more complicated than that as well. We know that there are many people who've got a cancer in their bodies that they would not have known about had they not gone to get tested for it. And they would never have known about it because it wasn't a cancer that was destined to spread or to kill them or to cause problems.
Is this quite a rare thing, though, that people have cancers that won't go on to kill them?
There's a background that's useful, which is that there have been a lot of autopsy studies done over the last few decades where people have examined the tissues of individuals who have died suddenly and unexpectedly, usually road traffic accidents. So they've had a sudden death and these people weren't being treated for cancer, they weren't being investigated for cancer, they didn't have symptoms that we knew about that would suggest cancer. And their tissues have been examined but have found cancer in around about 7% of cases.
7%?
Yeah.
This does seem like quite a astonishing thing to say.
It's a really weird thing to try and think about because it runs counter to everything that we're taught and we're told. If you go and look for cancer, you will find cancer. There's no question about that. So if you go and put, hundreds of people through a CT scanner or an MRI scanner, you will find cancers that they had no symptoms of, they didn't have any inkling about. The big question is whether that cancer was going to go on and do that person harm.
Some of the studies using MRIs put this number slightly lower, but we do know that there is a pool of undiagnosed tumours out there. But to discover whether those cancers will cause harm, Margaret wanted to show me something extraordinary that reveals why hunting for cancer cells isn't always a good thing.
So this is a graph of what happened in South Korea when they decided to offer the population screening for thyroid cancer. And they started to screen people just in 1999. So you'll see that as they started to screen for thyroid cancer, they found more and more and more and more thyroid cancer. But what you really need to know is, does this make a difference to death rates? Look at the orange line down the bottom, and you'll see that the mortality is a flat line. And this is a classic graph showing overdiagnosis, because what you're doing is you're diagnosing more and more and more thyroid cancer, but you're not making any difference to death rates.
If you get diagnosed with thyroid cancer, what happens? What is the treatment for it? It's all in the neck, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So your thyroid gland round about here, you're going to be offered surgery, you might be offered radiotherapy, you might have to go into long-term treatment after that. So lots of interventions.
So there will be some people who've had surgery on their necks that they didn't need?
Totally, absolutely. If you're not going to benefit from a treatment, all it can possibly do is give you side effects.
I guess in the UK, for something like thyroid cancer, we don't screen.
Yeah.
But then there are other types of cancer where, well, we do, like breast cancer, for example. So in that case, then, is the equation flipped? Is it very obvious that there's a benefit to do it?
Well, I'd love to say that there was, but it is more complex. So the government have made a decision that it's cost-effective to offer it to women. So the Marmot Review looked at the evidence around this a few years ago, and they concluded that for every 200 women that had breast cancer screening, you would delay the death of one woman, but at the cost of 3 women being overtreated for breast cancer.
And when you say overtreated, are those the type of women who have cancer but don't know about it, and it's not really going to go on to cause a problem, and yet they're having things like mastectomies and biopsies and all of the concerns around those?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So these are people that these are women that would never have come to the attention of a doctor had they not had the test done.
So what you're saying, it's good for this group of women overall, but sorry, you're the unlucky one and you're the unlucky one and so are you.
But the problem is that those women will never know that they've been unlucky. And this is the really big problem, because the temptation is for every single woman who's been detected as having a problem to think that she has been diagnosed early and that her life has been made better because of that. But you just don't know that. You don't know which of those women that you are, whether you're the woman that actually did get a benefit or whether you're the majority of women that actually didn't get a benefit from treatment.
Do you think it is a big problem that you have those 3 women in 200 being overtreated?
Well, I suppose I wouldn't be the person to judge that. It would be those individual women to judge that. So if you have breast cancer screening, I think you should decide for yourself whether you think that that risk is worth it or not worth it. You know, are you happy with that risk yourself?
Cancer screening saves thousands of lives every year, but it's important to acknowledge that this is not without cost.
There's like this fundamental disconnect, really, between what the numbers say and what it actually feels like when you're the number. Because of course you can look at all those statistics and say, oh, that is pretty terrible that people are having these life-changing surgeries that they don't need, that they never had to go through. But then at the same time, having been diagnosed with cancer, I know in that moment, I just wanted to get rid of it. Just wanted to get rid of it. It wouldn't really have mattered what the numbers said.